Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became close friends with Kurogiri early? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The water in the koi pond was stagnant. It smelled of algae, fish waste, and the distinct, sulfurous tang of burnt paper. Izuku Midoriya stood knee-deep in the muck, his shoes squelching into the soft, unforgiving silt at the bottom. The water soaked through his socks, chilling his skin, but the cold was a distant sensation. It felt miles away, separated from his mind by a thick, suffocating layer of numbness. His hand trembled as he reached out, fingers brushing against the soggy remains of a notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. The cover was charred black, the edges crumbling into ash that floated on the surface of the green water like morbid confetti. The koi fish, indifferent to his tragedy, nibbled at the paper. "Don't worry about it," Katsuki Bakugo had said, his voice laced with that terrifyingly casual cruelty that Izuku had never learned to navigate. "I'm just doing you a favor. Don't want you getting your hopes up." Izuku clutched the wet book to his chest. The ink was running. The notes on Kamiri Woods he had taken just that morning, the sketches of the binding lacquered chain prison, the calculations on tensile strength, were bleeding into incomprehensible gray smears, just like him. Just a smear on the background of everyone else's life. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Izuku waded out of the pond. He climbed over the small lip of concrete, his wet sneakers making a heavy, slapping sound against the pavement. He didn't look back at the school building. The final bell had rung 20 minutes ago. The courtyard was empty. "Take a swan dive off the roof of the building and pray for a quirk in your next life." The words didn't hurt. That was the terrifying part. They didn't feel like a punch to the gut or a burn on the skin. They felt like a truth he had been trying to ignore, finally spoken aloud. They felt like gravity. Izuku started walking. He didn't walk toward the train station. He didn't walk toward the path that led to the quiet apartment complex where his mother would be waiting with worry lines etched into her forehead, and a dinner he wouldn't have the stomach to eat. He just walked. He kept his head down, staring at the rhythm of his red shoes hitting the concrete. Step. Squelch. Step. Squelch. The sun began to dip lower, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, casting long, distorted shadows that stretched out before him like grasping fingers. He walked past the residential district. He walked past the shopping arcade where he used to watch All Might on the big screens. He walked until the clean, paved roads gave way to cracked asphalt and the cheery billboards were replaced by flickering neon signs advertising bars, loan sharks, and things people didn't talk about in the daylight. Izuku knew he should stop. His tactical mind, the part of him that never shut up, whispered that he was crossing into the lower districts, the areas near Kamino where the crime rates spiked and the pro-heroes patrolled less frequently. It was dangerous for anyone, let alone a scrawny, quirkless middle schooler soaking wet and smelling of pond scum. But stopping meant thinking. Stopping meant going home and looking in the mirror. Stopping meant acknowledging that Katsuki was right. So he kept moving, burying himself in the noise of the city's underbelly. The air here tasted different. It tasted like exhaust fumes, cheap tobacco, and desperation. He turned a corner into a narrow alleyway, seeking a shortcut to nowhere. The walls were high here, brick damp with moss and grime. The sounds of the main street were muffled, replaced by the hum of a ventilation fan and the dripping of a leaky pipe. Well, look what the tide dragged in. Izuku stopped. The numbness in his chest cracked, just a fraction, letting a cold sliver of fear seep in. He looked up. The alley wasn't empty. 3 figures blocked the path ahead. They weren't villains, not the kind with costumes and manifestos. These were street thugs, the kind who wore leather jackets too big for them and carried the jagged, restless energy of predators looking for a toy. The one in the center was tall, his skin a sickly shade of gray, with eyes that bulged like a frog's. Smoke curled from the fingertips of the man on the left. The third, a woman with hair like rusted wire, cracked her knuckles. "Lost, kid?" the smoker asked. His voice sounded like gravel grinding in a blender. He took a step forward, the smoke from his hands thickening into a noxious cloud. "You're a long way from the playground." Izuku took a step back, his back hitting the cold brick wall. He clutched his ruined notebook tighter. I'm sorry. I took a wrong turn. I'll leave. Leave? The gray-skinned man laughed, a wet, unpleasant sound. You're wet. You smell like a sewer. And you've got a school uniform that costs more than my rent. He stepped closer, looming over Izuku. You're clearly having a bad day. Why don't you make a donation to the Cheer Us Up Fund and we might let you walk out of here with your teeth? Izuku's breath hitched. He scanned them. Quirk assessment. Center. Mutant type. Likely enhanced strength or flexibility based on the skin texture and muscle density. Left. Emitter. Smoke generation. Could be poisonous or just obscurant. Right. Unknown. But her posture suggests close quarters combat. Me. Quirkless. Useless. Alone. I don't have any money, Izuku squeaked, his voice cracking. It was the truth. He had spent his last allowance on the new notebook. The one currently disintegrating in his hands. Liar, the wire-haired woman spat. She lunged. Izuku flinched, curling into a ball, waiting for the impact. He waited for the pain. He deserved it, didn't he? He was a waste of space. A Deku. If he died here, in a dirty alleyway in Kamino, maybe Katsuki wouldn't have to worry about the smudge on his permanent record. The woman's hand, elongated and sharp, slashed through the air. Whoosh. The sound wasn't the impact of flesh on flesh. It was the sound of a vacuum sealing. It was the sound of the world suddenly inhaling. What the? Izuku opened his eyes. The woman was gone. There was no blood. No body. She had simply ceased to exist in the space she had occupied a microsecond ago. The two remaining thugs froze, their aggression instantly replaced by confusion. The smoker spun around. Maki? Where the hell did you? A shadow fell over them. Not a shadow cast by the setting sun, but something deeper. A void. Behind the thugs, the air was warping. A swirling, violet darkness spiraled into existence, expanding like a drop of ink in water. It was terrifyingly beautiful, a kaleidoscope of deep purples and blacks, illuminated by glowing, spectral yellow eyes that narrowed in the center of the mist. It is incredibly rude, a voice spoke from the void, to clutter my doorstep with such noise. The voice was deep, baritone, and terrifyingly polite. It vibrated in Izuku's chest. The gray-skinned thug stumbled back. Who are you? A hero? A hero? The mist seemed to ripple with amusement. Hardly. I am merely the bartender. And I dislike loiterers. The mist surged forward. It didn't move like wind, it moved like a liquid, intelligent and precise. Get back! The smoker screamed, unleashing a torrent of thick, black smog. The purple mist didn't even pause. The smoke hit the swirling vortex and simply vanished, warped away to some unknown coordinate. The mist elongated, tendrils of darkness shooting out faster than the eye could follow. One tendril wrapped around the smoker's waist. He didn't even have time to scream before he was yanked backward into the void. Zip. Gone. The gray-skinned man shrieked, scrambling over the wet pavement, trying to run past Izuku. Stay away. Stay away from me. The mist expanded, forming a wall in front of the escaping thug. The yellow eyes narrowed. Please, the entity said, sounding bored. Do not make a mess. A warp gate opened beneath the running man's feet. He fell, flailing, dropping through the floor of the world. The gate snapped shut with a soft pop. Silence returned to the alleyway. Izuku stood frozen, pressed against the brick wall. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was alone with the monster now. The purple mist swirled, condensing back into a humanoid shape. It wore a suit, a pristine vest, a crisp white shirt, and a metal brace around what should have been a neck. The body was made of that same, impossible darkness. The glowing yellow eyes turned to Izuku. Izuku stopped breathing. This was a villain. A powerful one. He had just disposed of 3 people in under 10 seconds without lifting a finger. He should run. He should scream. But his legs wouldn't move. And his brain was doing the thing it always did. The entity took a step toward him. You are not injured, are you? Izuku stared at the mist. He stared at the way the purple light refracted, the way the fog held a solid shape despite being gas. Is it sight-based? Izuku whispered. The entity paused. The yellow eyes blinked. I beg your pardon? Izuku's mouth moved faster than his survival instinct. The numbness was gone, replaced by the frantic, obsessive curiosity that was the only thing keeping him sane. Your quirk, Izuku mumbled, his eyes darting over the entity's form. You warped them. But you didn't touch them directly. You created coordinates in space. Is it line of sight? Do you have to see where you're sending them, or do you have a mental map of the area? And the smoke, you warp the gas. That means you can warp matter regardless of state. Solids, liquids, gases, that requires incredible precision. If you weren't careful, you could warp the air out of someone's lungs or warp just half of their body. Izuku trailed off, realizing he was muttering. He slapped a hand over his mouth, his eyes widening. Stupid, Deku. Stupid. You're talking to a murderer. The entity stood perfectly still. The mist swirled slowly around the metal neck brace. You. The voice was slower now, laced with genuine confusion. You are analyzing me. I am sorry. Izuku bowed so low his forehead nearly hit his knees. I didn't mean to. It's a bad habit. Please don't kill me. There was a long silence. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the void to open up beneath him. Kill you? The entity repeated. Why would I kill a customer? Izuku slowly straightened up. See customer? The entity, the bartender, brushed invisible dust off his vest. I came out simply to dispose of the trash accumulating near my employer's back entrance. You, however, do not appear to be trash. You appear to be a student in dire need of a towel. The yellow eyes crinkled slightly. Most people scream, the bartender said softly. Or run. Or beg. You represent the first instance of someone asking about my coordinate specificity. It's a really amazing quirk, Izuku blurted out. He couldn't help it. It's versatile. Defensive, offensive, transport, support. It's incredible. The mist seemed to glitch. For a second, the yellow eyes widened, and the swirling fog stuttered, turning chaotic before smoothing out again. The entity raised a hand to his head, as if fighting a sudden migraine. Amazing. The entity muttered to himself, the words sounding foreign on his tongue. He shook his head. You are shivering, boy. I fell in a pond, Izuku said miserably, so I smell. The entity gestured with a shadowy hand toward a heavy steel door that was almost invisible against the gloom of the alley. I cannot in good conscience leave a child to catch pneumonia on my doorstep. Come in. I will provide you with a towel and a warm drink. Then you will go home. Izuku hesitated. Every lesson he had ever learned about stranger danger screamed at him. This was a villain's lair. But then he thought about home. He thought about his empty room. He thought about the silence. He looked at the entity. The glowing eyes weren't looking at him with pity. They weren't looking at him with disdain. They were just waiting. Polite. Patient. Okay, Izuku whispered. The bar was unlike anything Izuku expected. From the outside, it was a rotting brick building in the slums. Inside, it was a pocket of jazz-infused elegance. The lighting was low and warm, bouncing off polished mahogany and brass fixtures. Rows of bottles glittered behind the counter like jewels. It smelled of cedar, old leather, and something sterile, like rubbing alcohol. Sit, the entity commanded gently, pointing to a barstool. Izuku sat. He felt filthy in such a clean room. He placed his soggy notebook on the counter, where it landed with a wet thud. The entity moved behind the bar. He placed a pristine white towel on the counter next to Izuku. Dry yourself. I will prepare tea. I assume you are too young for anything stronger, despite looking like you carry the weight of the world. Tea is fine. Thank you, Izuku paused, drying his hair vigorously. I don't know your name. The bartender paused while reaching for a kettle. I go by Kurogiri. Kurogiri, Izuku tested the name. Black fog. Literal. I'm Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Kurogiri hummed, a low vibration. He moved with an eerie grace, his hands performing the tasks of brewing tea with practiced, almost robotic efficiency. Yet there was a flair to it. A refinement. So, Midoriya-kun, Kurogiri said, placing a steaming cup of Earl Grey in front of him. What possesses a middle school student to wander into the Kamino ward looking like he lost the fight with the swamp? Izuku wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic mug. The heat seeped into his frozen fingers. I didn't lose a fight, Izuku murmured, staring into the dark liquid. I didn't even fight back. Kurogiri began polishing a glass. Squeak. Squeak. The rhythm was soothing. A pacifist? Kurogiri asked. A punching bag, Izuku corrected bitterly. The words spilled out before he could stop them. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was because this man was a stranger, a villain who would probably never see him again. I'm quirkless. He waited for the laugh. He waited for the sneer. He waited for Kurogiri to realize he had wasted a towel on a defect. Kurogiri didn't stop polishing the glass. I see. That was it. 2 words. Neutral. Izuku looked up, confused. That's it? You don't care? Should I? Kurogiri tilted his misty head. Does the lack of a genetic abnormality impair your ability to drink tea? Or to analyze spatial coordinates? Izuku felt a lump form in his throat. It was painful, expanding rapidly. Everyone else cares. My teachers. My childhood friend. All Might. Society places undue value on power, Kurogiri said. His voice dropped an octave, becoming colder, echoing the sentiments of someone else. They sort the sheep from the wolves and discard the rest. It is a flawed system. I wanted to be a hero, Izuku whispered, tears pricking his eyes. I wanted to save people. Like All Might does. But today he told me to be realistic. Kurogiri stopped polishing. He set the glass down. He placed both hands on the counter and leaned forward, the yellow eyes burning with intensity. All Might told you that? I met him, Izuku confessed, the dam breaking. Earlier today. I asked him if someone without a quirk could be a hero. He said no. He said I should be a police officer. He said it's good to dream, but you must accept your lot in life, Kurogiri finished. The mist around his neck flared, spiking violently for a second before calming down. How disappointing. He's right, though. Izuku wiped his eyes with the towel. I'm useless. I can't do anything. I just mutter and write notes that no one reads. Kurogiri reached out. A tendril of mist extended and tapped the wet cover of the notebook. May I? Izuku blinked. It's ruined. And it's just stupid fanboy stuff. Indulge me. Izuku pushed the notebook forward. Kurogiri opened it with surprising delicacy. The pages were soaked, the ink running, but much of it was still legible. He flipped through the pages. Silence stretched in the bar. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Izuku watched Kurogiri's eyes darting across the pages. He was reading the entry on Empty Lady. Then the entry on Kamui Woods. Then an older entry on Endeavor. Your handwriting is atrocious, Kurogiri noted. I write fast, Izuku defended weakly. But your observations. Kurogiri paused on a page detailing the weaknesses of a local hero named Death Arms. You note here that Death Arms relies heavily on upper body strength, and leaves his lower flanks exposed during his signature punch. You suggest a tripwire strategy, or low center of gravity takedown. Yeah, Izuku sniffled. He telegraphs his punches. He winds up his shoulder. If you watch his elbow, you know where the hit is coming from a full second before he throws it. Kurogiri turned the page. And here. You hypothesize that Backdraft's water pumps could be clogged by a coagulating agent, rendering him useless. Well, yeah? His pipes are external. Kurogiri closed the book. He looked at Izuku. It was a long, heavy look. Midoriya-kun, Kurogiri said slowly. You are not useless. Izuku froze. You possess a tactical mind, Kurogiri continued. You see the mechanics of power. Most people look at a hero and see the flash, the bang. You see the gears turning underneath. You see where the machine is weak. But knowing isn't doing, Izuku argued, his voice trembling. I can't do anything about it. I'm weak. Strength is a tool, Kurogiri said. He turned and pulled a bottle from the shelf. He didn't pour it, just looked at the label. If you do not have a hammer, you use a rock. If you do not have a rock, you use gravity. If you lack the physical power to crush your enemy, You must have the mental acuity to make them crush themselves. He looked back at Izuku. All might is a hammer. He solves problems by hitting them. You. Kurogiri tapped his own temple. You are a scalpel. Or you could be, if you stopped pitying yourself for lacking a hammer. The words hit Izuku harder than Bakugo's explosions ever had. They weren't comforting. They were challenging. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked. You're a villain, aren't you? You hurt those men. I removed obstacles, Kurogiri corrected. And I am telling you this because I find waste distasteful. And because, Kurogiri hesitated again. The glitch returned. A spark of static in the mist. For a fleeting second, the deep, artificial voice slipped, sounding younger, lighter. Because everyone needs a little push sometimes, the voice corrected itself instantly. Because I require payment for the tea, Izuku blinked. Payment? I told you, I don't have money. I do not want money, Kurogiri said. He pushed the notebook back to Izuku. Information. Perspective. It is a valuable currency. He gestured around the empty bar. My master, he is young. Impatient. He sees the world like a video game. He lacks subtlety. He believes destruction is the only path to victory. Kurogiri sighed, a sound like wind through a tunnel. I am tasked with guiding him. But I am an observer, not an analyst. I do not see the cracks the way you do. Izuku stared at him. You want me to help you analyze villains? I want you to talk, Kurogiri said. You clearly have no one else who listens. And I have many hours of silence to fill while I polish these glasses. Come back. Sit. Drink tea. Tell me about the heroes you worship. Tell me where they are strong. Tell me where they are weak. You'd use that info to hurt them, Izuku said, gripping the counter. I can't do that. I am a bartender, Kurogiri said smoothly. I listen to the woes of my patrons. What I do with that information is my business. What you choose to share is yours. If you wish to only complain about your school bullies, I will listen to that too. He leaned in closer. But ask yourself, Midoriya-kun, who else is offering you a seat at the table? The heroes? Izuku looked down at his hands. The heroes had told him to give up. The heroes had left him on a roof with a shattered dream. This man, this monster made of shadow, had given him a towel and called him a scalpel. Izuku started. I don't know. You do not have to decide now, Kurogiri said. He checked a clock on the wall. It is late. Your mother will worry. Kurogiri came out from behind the bar. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. The touch was cold, but solid. I will escort you to the edge of the district. It is not safe for you here alone. Izuku slid off the stool. His legs felt a little steadier. Thank you, Kurogiri-san. Just Kurogiri. They walked in silence through the dark streets. Kurogiri didn't walk like a normal person. He seemed to glide, his feet barely touching the ground, the mist trailing behind him like a cape. Thugs and criminals scattered when they saw him. People crossed the street to avoid the purple void. Izuku walked in his shadow, a strange, small figure in a ruined uniform next to a nightmare. For the first time in his life, walking through the city at night, Izuku didn't feel afraid. He felt protected. They reached the boundary line where the broken streetlights were replaced by the steady glow of the residential district. This is far enough, Kurogiri said, halting. If I go further, I will attract the attention of the pros. Izuku turned to him. Will you be there? If I come back? Kurogiri paused. He looked at the boy, the messy green hair, the wide, desperate eyes, the fierce intelligence hidden behind a wall of anxiety. Deep inside Kurogiri's mind, buried under layers of genetic coding and master's commands, something vibrated. A memory of a cat. A memory of a rooftop. A memory of a friend with blue hair who smiled too much. Save him. The thought was alien. Kurogiri pushed it down. We open at 5, Kurogiri said simply. The back door is always unlocked. Izuku nodded. He gripped the strap of his yellow backpack. Thank you, Izuku said again. For not looking at me like I'm broken. You are not broken, Izuku Midoriya, Kurogiri said, fading back into the shadows of the alley. You are merely unassembled. The mist swirled, and with a soft whoosh, Kurogiri was gone. Izuku stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where the villain had been. The smell of ozone and expensive tea lingered in the air. He turned and started the walk home. His mother was frantic when he walked in. She cried over his wet clothes, fussed over his pale skin, and asked him 100 questions. I just fell, Mom, Izuku lied, his voice steady. I fell, and I got lost. But someone helped me. Oh, thank goodness, Inko wept, hugging him tight. A hero? Izuku hugged her back, burying his face in her shoulder. He thought of the purple mist. He thought of the yellow eyes. He thought of the offer of a seat at the table. No, Izuku whispered. Not a hero. Later that night, Izuku sat at his desk. His All Might posters beamed down at him, their smiles fixed and blinding. For years those smiles had been his lifeline. Tonight they felt distant. Plastic. He opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh notebook. He didn't write hero analysis on the cover. He uncapped his pen. He thought about the warp gate. He thought about the coordinates. He thought about the man who listened. On the first page, he wrote, Kurogiri, quirk analysis and theoretical applications. He began to write. He wrote about the potential range limitations. He wrote about the cooldown periods. He wrote about how the mist acted as a shield for the physical body underneath. And for the first time since the doctor had looked at his toe X-rays 10 years ago, Izuku didn't feel like a defect. He felt like a scientist. He felt useful. 2 weeks later, the back door of the bar opened with a creak. Kurogiri didn't look up from the glass he was drying. You are 4 minutes late, Midoriya. Izuku slipped inside, closing the door quickly behind him to shut out the noise of the alley. He looked better than he had the first night. His uniform was clean, though his shoulders were still hunched with the weight of school. But there was a spark in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Sorry, Izuku panted, dropping his bag on a stool. Bakugo, was in a mood today. I had to take the long way around to avoid him. Bakugo. The explosive one, Kurogiri mused. Volatile temper. Egocentric. Dangerous combination. He's going to be a top hero, Izuku said, hopping onto the stool. He sounds like a liability, Kurogiri countered. He slid a cup of tea across the counter. Jasmine today, thanks. Izuku took a sip, sighing in contentment. He reached into his bag and pulled out a notebook. So, I was thinking about what you said yesterday. About the Nomu project? I know you said it's classified, but hypothetically. Hypothetically, Kurogiri agreed, leaning in. If you're trying to create a creature that can withstand 100% of All Might's power, shock absorption isn't enough, Izuku said, flipping to a page covered in complex diagrams. Absorption has a limit. Eventually, the kinetic energy has to go somewhere or the vessel ruptures. You need nullification or redirection. Kurogiri stared at the diagram. It was crude, but the physics were sound. Redirection, Kurogiri murmured, turning his own power against him. Exactly, Izuku said, tapping the paper with his pen. If he hits something and the force bounces back? He'd hesitate. And All Might never hesitates. That split second of confusion? That's your window. Izuku looked up, realizing what he had just said. He bit his lip. I mean, hypothetically. If you were a villain trying to beat him. Kurogiri looked at the boy. The master, Shigaraki, was in the back room playing video games, screaming at a screen. Shigaraki wanted to kill All Might, but he had no plan other than hit him hard. Here sat a 14-year-old boy who worshipped All Might, yet had just dismantled the symbol of peace's fighting style in 5 minutes over a cup of jasmine tea. You are a terrifying child, Kurogiri said softly. Izuku flushed red. I'm just muttering. Keep muttering, Kurogiri said. He reached under the counter and pulled out a small plate of cookies. Store-bought, but presented on fine china. I am listening, Izuku smiled. It wasn't the practiced, trembling smile he gave his mother. It was genuine. Okay, Izuku said. So, there's this hero called Eraserhead. Kurogiri's hand twitched. The mist rippled. Eraserhead, Kurogiri repeated, the name echoing in the hollow chambers of his artificial memory. A headache spiked behind his eyes, sharp, white-hot, and smelling of rain. Yeah. He's an underground hero. Really cool. He erases quirks by looking at them. Izuku started sketching a man with goggles and a scarf. Kurogiri stared at the sketch. The headache intensified. He felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to tell Izuku to run. To tell him to go to UA. To find this Eraserhead. Shirakumo. Loud Cloud. Let's go for sushi, Kurogiri? Izuku asked, concern etching his face. Are you okay? Your mist is vibrating. Kurogiri squeezed his eyes shut. The programming clamped down. The master's voice in his head silenced the ghost. Protect the boy. He is an asset. Kurogiri opened his eyes. The yellow glow was steady again. I am fine, Midoriya, Kurogiri lied. A minor glitch. Please. Continue. Tell me about Eraserhead. As Izuku spoke, his voice filling the quiet bar, Kurogiri realized two things. First, that this boy was dangerous to the status quo of the world. Second, that for the first time since his birth, Kurogiri didn't feel like a tool. He felt like a person, and he would kill anyone, hero or villain, who tried to take this boy's smile away. The bell above the door of the bar did not ring. Kurogiri had removed the clapper 3 days ago. He found the sudden, cheerful chime discordant with the atmosphere he was trying to cultivate, an atmosphere of heavy velvet, low jazz, and absolute, hermetic silence. Izuku Midoriya appreciated the silence. It was 4:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Outside, the sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain that never seemed to fall. Inside, the air was cool, conditioned to a precise 68 degrees, smelling of lemon polish and the faint, sweet scent of simple syrup. Izuku sat on his usual stool, the third one from the left, furthest from the entrance, tucked into the shadows of a large potted fern. His yellow backpack was at his feet. His blazer was folded neatly on the counter. His tie was loosened. For the first time all day, his shoulders were not hunched up to his ears in anticipation of an explosion, or a jeer. The structural integrity of the Kamui Woods lacquered chain prison is overrated, Izuku murmured, his voice low, blending with the saxophone track playing softly from the vintage speakers. Kurogiri stood opposite him, polishing a highball glass with a microfiber cloth. The motion was hypnotic. Circle. Swipe. Circle. Swipe. Elaborate, Kurogiri said. He didn't look up, but his yellow eyes were bright, focused entirely on the boy. It's wood, Izuku said, tapping the eraser of his pencil against his open notebook. Hardwood, sure. Denser than oak. But it's still organic matter. It has a combustion point. It has a breaking point based on grain direction. Against a villain with a thermal quirk, or even just someone with a high-torque physical enhancement, it's not a prison. It's kindling. Yet, Kurogiri countered smoothly, Kamui Woods has a 94% capture rate this quarter. Because he targets low-level street thugs and purse snatchers, Izuku argued, his eyes lighting up with the fervent, terrifying intensity that only Kurogiri seemed to appreciate. He operates in Shibuya and Shinjuku. High-density, narrow streets. His quirk is optimized for verticality and crowd control. But if you put him in an open field against a heavy hitter, or in a burning building, he's a liability. He'd be focusing so hard on not catching fire that he'd lose the target. Izuku sketched a quick diagram in the margin of his notebook, a stick figure Kamui Woods being outmaneuvered by a hypothetical villain with a flamethrower. If I were fighting him, Izuku whispered, I wouldn't run away. I'd run at him. I'd force him into a grapple. Wood is rigid. If you apply pressure to the joints, the elbows, the knees, where the wood has to be thinner to allow movement, snap. Kurogiri stopped polishing. He held the glass up to the light, inspecting it for specks of dust that didn't exist. Brutal, Kurogiri commented. And efficient. It's just theory, Izuku said quickly, shrinking back a little, the old shame flickering in his chest. I mean, I couldn't actually do it. I'm quirkless. We have discussed this, Midoriya, Kurogiri said, his tone dipping into that strange, paternal scolding that felt both alien and familiar. A quirk is a weapon. A mind is a commander. A weapon without a commander is merely a dangerous paperweight. He set the glass down and slid a small plate across the mahogany surface. On it sat 3 perfectly triangular cucumber sandwiches, crusts removed. Eat. You look pale. Izuku stared at the sandwiches. Kurogiri-san, you don't have to feed me. I don't have any money today either. Consider it waste management, Kurogiri said. I practiced slicing cucumbers to test the precision of a new portal aperture. These are the byproducts. If you do not eat them, they will go in the trash. It was a lie. Izuku knew it was a lie. The cucumbers were hand-sliced with a knife, not a portal. He could see the slight serration marks. But he didn't call Kurogiri out on it. He was too hungry. He hadn't eaten lunch. Katsuki had exploded his bento box during the break, reducing his rice and sausages to carbonized mush. Thank you, Izuku mumbled, picking up a sandwich. This had become their ritual. For the past 2 weeks, every day after school, Izuku walked past the train station, past the arcade, and into the dark, labyrinthine alleys of Kamino. He came to the bar with the sign that just said open. He sat. He drank tea. He ate whatever test food Kurogiri had prepared. And he talked. He talked until his throat was dry. He vented about the teachers who looked the other way. He analyzed the heroes he saw on the news, tearing apart their strategies with a surgical precision that seemed to unsettle and delight the misty bartender in equal measure. For Izuku, it was an addiction. For 14 years he had been a ghost. He had been invisible, or worse, a target. Here, in this dimly lit bar that smelled of cedar and secrets, he was real. He was heard. How was school? Kurogiri asked, moving to organize the liquor bottles by color gradient. Izuku chewed slowly, swallowing the bite of sandwich. The usual. We had a career counseling session today. Kurogiri's hand paused over a bottle of bourbon. Ah. The ritualistic crushing of dreams. Pretty much, Izuku let out a dry, humorless laugh. The teacher read our choices out loud. When he got to mine, he laughed. He said, Midoriya wants to go to UA? The whole class laughed. Izuku stared at his reflection in the polished counter. Bakugo. He told me that UA doesn't accept pebbles on the side of the road. He said I'd die in the entrance exam. Kurogiri turned slowly. The purple mist around his neck brace flared, spiking like the hackles of a wolf. Bakugo Katsuki, Kurogiri said, the name rolling off his tongue like a curse. The boy with the nitroglycerin sweat. Yeah, he sounds insecure, Kurogiri observed. Only the weak feel the need to constantly broadcast their strength. True power does not need to scream. He's not weak, Izuku defended instinctively. He's amazing. He's going to be the #1 hero. He has a lot of pride. Pride is a flaw, Kurogiri corrected. It blinds you. It makes you predictable. If I were to engage Bakugo Katsuki, I would not fight his fire. I would insult him. I would make him angry. An angry fighter makes mistakes. He overextends. He forgets his surroundings. Kurogiri leaned over the counter, his glowing yellow eyes narrowing. And then, when he is swinging blindly at the air, screaming about his greatness, I would drop him into the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Izuku blinked. The image was vivid. He imagined Katsuki, red-faced and popping with explosions, suddenly vanishing into a purple void and reappearing 3 miles underwater. A small, choked sound escaped Izuku's throat. A giggle. He slapped a hand over his mouth, horrified. He shouldn't laugh. That was terrible. That was a villainous thought, but Kurogiri's eyes crinkled. The mist softened. Better, the bartender said. Laughter suits you more than despair, Midoriya. Izuku lowered his hand, a small, guilty smile lingering on his lips. I guess. He reached for his notebook again. Actually, speaking of water pressure, I was thinking about how deep ocean rescue heroes deal with nitrogen narcosis. If you have a gigantification quirk like Empty Lady, does the pressure affect you differently? Her surface area increases, but does her density? An interesting query, Kurogiri mused. Let us consider the physics of clang. The sound was not a bell. It was the heavy, violent impact of the back door being kicked open. The metal shuddered against the brick, the lock screaming in protest. The atmosphere in the bar shattered instantly. The jazz music seemed to die, strangled by the sudden influx of cold, dirty air and palpable malice. Izuku froze. His pen hovered over the paper. His survival instincts, honed by years of navigating the minefield of middle school, screamed danger. Kurogiri went rigid. The mist around him didn't just spike, it turned turbulent, swirling violently like a storm cloud. Kurogiri. A voice rasped. It was a voice like dry leaves scraping over concrete. Scratchy. High-pitched. Petulant. Where are you? I'm thirsty. Footsteps thudded down the short hallway that led from the back alley entrance to the main bar area. They were uneven, shuffling footsteps. Izuku scrambled to get off the stool, panic seizing his chest. I should go. Stay, Kurogiri hissed. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, low and urgent. Do not move. Do not speak. You are furniture. What? Trust me, Kurogiri whispered. With a fluid motion, he swept Izuku's notebook and pencil case off the counter and dropped them behind the bar. He grabbed a crate of citrus fruits from under the counter and slammed it down in front of Izuku. You are the delivery boy, Kurogiri murmured, his voice dropping to a rapid, barely audible frequency. You are delivering limes. You are invisible. You are an NPC. Before Izuku could process what an NPC was, the figure emerged from the hallway. Izuku stopped breathing. The young man who walked into the bar was wrong. That was the only word Izuku's brain could supply. He was thin, emaciated, wearing a black hoodie and dark pants that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His hair was a pale, sickly blue-gray, hanging in messy clumps over his face. But it was the hands that made Izuku's blood turn to ice. Disembodied, gray hands clasped all over his body. On his arms. On his chest. On his shoulders. And one, large and grotesque, clinging to his face, obscuring everything but a single, bloodshot red eye that peered out from between the fingers. The man scratched at his neck. Scritch. 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 The sound was wet and raw. Kurogiri, the man whined, walking toward the bar. He didn't seem to notice Izuku. Or if he did, he didn't care. I hate this game. The tutorial is too long. The mobs are bugged. I want to skip to the boss fight. Izuku sat paralyzed on the stool, his hands gripping the crate of limes so hard his knuckles turned white. He stared straight ahead, focusing on a bottle of vodka, trying to make himself small, trying to disappear. Kurogiri drifted smoothly to the center of the bar, placing himself between the man and Izuku. Patience, Tamura Shigaraki, Kurogiri said. His voice was calm, but Izuku, who had spent hours analyzing the bartender's mannerisms, heard the tension. He heard the tightness in the vocal cords. Sensei has instructed us to wait. We must gather our party before venturing forth. Sensei is taking too long, Shigaraki muttered. He climbed onto a stool 3 seats away from Izuku. He spun around, facing the ceiling. I'm bored. I want to destroy something. Everything is so annoying. He began to scratch his neck harder. The skin was red and flaky. Give me a drink, Shigaraki demanded. Something that tastes like ash. Whiskey, then, Kurogiri said. He poured a glass, his movements precise, but his eyes kept darting momentarily to Izuku. Izuku felt the weight of the red eye on him. Shigaraki had stopped spinning. He was looking at him. Who's the brat? Shigaraki asked. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Thump thump thump. It was so loud. Surely they could hear it. The delivery from the grocer, Kurogiri said smoothly, sliding the whiskey glass toward Shigaraki to draw his attention back. We were out of limes. I require them for the gimlets. Shigaraki picked up the glass. He held it with 4 fingers, his pinky extended delicately. He's staring at me, Shigaraki said. Izuku immediately looked down at the limes. Green. Waxy. Round. Green. Waxy. Round. He is waiting for the payment signature, Kurogiri improvised. He is a simple errand boy. An NPC. Pay him no mind. NPCs are annoying, Shigaraki grumbled. He took a sip of the whiskey. They block the path. They have repetitive dialogue. Sometimes, Shigaraki turned on his stool. He leaned toward Izuku. The hand on his face seemed to tighten its grip, Sometimes I just want to delete them to see what drops. Izuku couldn't help it. His tactical brain, the one that never shut off, kicked into overdrive. Observation: the way he holds the glass. 4 fingers. Why? Is it a tic? Or a necessity? Hypothesis: touch-based activation. 5-point contact. The scratching, psychogenic pruritus? Anxiety-induced? Or a side effect of the quirk? The hands trophies? Armor? Restraints? The threat: delete. Not kill. Delete. Matter erasure? Disintegration? Izuku looked up. He met the red eye staring through the fingers. For a second, time suspended. Izuku saw a vast, bottomless well of hatred. It wasn't the petty bullying of Bakugo. It wasn't the indifference of society. It was a pure, chaotic desire to unmake the world. Shigaraki lifted his hand, the one not holding the glass. He reached out toward Izuku. "Hey kid," Shigaraki rasped. "Do you think you're the hero of your own story?" Izuku's throat locked. He couldn't speak. Kurogiri slammed a hand down on the counter. Bang! The sudden noise made Shigaraki flinch. He pulled his hand back, snarling at the bartender. "What?" "The bill," Kurogiri said, his voice unusually loud. "I have signed it. The boy needs to leave. He has other deliveries. Unless you want the supplier to stop serving us? Good citrus is hard to find in this district." Kurogiri shoved a crumpled receipt into Izuku's hand. His yellow eyes were wide, urgent. "Go." I, thank you," Izuku squeaked. He grabbed his bag from the floor. He abandoned the crate of limes. He didn't look back. He bolted for the door. "Wait," Shigaraki called out. Izuku froze, his hand on the doorknob. "You dropped your pen," Shigaraki said. Izuku looked back. Shigaraki was pointing a finger at the floor near the stool. Izuku's cheap ballpoint pen was lying there. "Keep it!" Izuku yelled, his voice cracking. He threw the door open and ran. He ran into the alley. He ran past the dumpsters. He ran until his lungs burned and the bar was just a dark speck behind him. Izuku didn't go home. He couldn't. His mother would see the shaking. She would see the terror. He sat on a park bench near the river, 3 miles away from the bar. The sun had set completely now. The streetlights flickered on, casting long, lonely shadows across the grass. He hugged his knees to his chest. Villains. He had known, intellectually. He knew Kurogiri had hurt those men in the alley. He knew Kurogiri spoke of a master. He knew the bar was shady, but he had compartmentalized it. He had told himself that Kurogiri was different. That Kurogiri was a gentleman who just happened to exist outside the law. A vigilante, maybe? Or a retired rogue. But that man. Shigaraki. That was evil. Pure, unadulterated malice. And Kurogiri served him. Kurogiri took orders from him. Kurogiri polished glasses for him. "I'm stupid," Izuku whispered into his knees. "I'm so stupid." He was training to be a hero. He wanted to go to UA. He wanted to save people with a smile. And for 2 weeks, he had been drinking tea in the lair of a monster. He had been giving tactical advice to the enemy. "You are a scalpel," Kurogiri had said. "A scalpel used by a surgeon saves lives. A scalpel used by a murderer is just a weapon." Izuku stood up. He felt sick. He had to tell someone. He should go to the police. He should go to All Might. And tell them what? "Hello, officer. I've been hanging out in a villain bar because nobody else likes me." Yes, I gave them detailed breakdowns of pro-hero weaknesses. Yes, I ate their cucumber sandwiches. They would arrest him. Or worse, they would laugh at him again. They would say, "Of course the quirkless kid turned traitor." It was only a matter of time. And Kurogiri. Izuku thought of the towel. He thought of the quiet voice saying, "You are not broken." He thought of the way Kurogiri had stepped between him and Shigaraki, the way the mist had spiked in protection. Kurogiri had saved him. Twice. "He's not like him," Izuku said to the empty park. "He's stuck." Izuku remembered the look in Kurogiri's eyes when Shigaraki entered. It wasn't loyalty. It was resignation. It was the look of a tired babysitter. Or a prisoner. and the glitches. The way Kurogiri sometimes paused, confused by his own words. The way he sometimes sounded like a completely different person. Pride is a flaw, laughter suits you. Izuku paced back and forth in front of the bench. His muttering started, fast and frantic. Kurogiri protected me. He hid me. He called me an NPC to make me boring to Shigaraki. If he was truly evil, he would have let Shigaraki kill me. Or he would have used me as bait. He didn't. Why? Because he cares? Or because of his code? He has a code. Shigaraki doesn't. Shigaraki is chaos. Kurogiri is order. They don't fit. Why are they together? A debt? Brainwashing? Coercion? Izuku stopped pacing. He looked back toward the direction of the bar. If he never went back, he would be safe. He could go back to being alone. He could go back to the suicide baiting, the burned notebooks, the silence. But if he never went back, what would happen to Kurogiri? He would stay in the dark. He would serve the man with the hands. He would eventually do something terrible, something he couldn't come back from. He gave me a seat at the table, Izuku whispered. A hero saves everyone. Even the people who don't want to be saved. Even the villains who might not be villains by choice. Izuku clenched his fists. His fingernails dug into his palms. He turned around. He started walking. Not toward home. Toward Kamino. The bar was closed. The sign on the door said closed. The lights were off. Izuku didn't care. He walked to the back alley. He stood in front of the heavy steel door. It was 8 p.m. He raised his hand. His fist trembled. Knock. 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 Silence. Go away, a voice came from inside. It was muffled, weary. We are closed. I know you're in there, Kurogiri, Izuku said. His voice was shaking, but loud. Open the door. Silence again. Then, the sound of the lock clicking. The door opened a crack. A sliver of purple mist drifted out. One glowing yellow eye peered through the gap. Midoriya, Kurogiri said softly. You possess a distinct lack of survival instinct. I told you to leave. You told me to deliver limes, Izuku said. I forgot the receipt. Kurogiri stared at him for a long moment. Then, with a heavy sigh that sounded like steam escaping a valve, he opened the door fully. Come in. Quickly, Izuku stepped inside. The bar was dark, lit only by the ambient streetlights filtering through the high windows and the glow of Kurogiri's eyes. Shigaraki was gone. Kurogiri locked the door behind him. He turned to face Izuku. He looked diminished. The mist was thinner, less voluminous. The metal brace around his neck looked heavy. You realized, Kurogiri stated. It wasn't a question. He had severed hands all over him, Izuku said, his voice hard. And he talked about killing people like it was a game. He's a villain. A real one. Yes, Kurogiri said. Tamura Shigaraki is being groomed to become the next symbol of fear. He is the successor to the Emperor of the Underground. And you? Izuku asked. He took a step forward. What are you? His butler? His slave? I am his caretaker, Kurogiri said. I was created to protect him. To guide him. To ensure he survives long enough to fulfill his destiny. Created? Izuku caught the word. What do you mean, created? Kurogiri hesitated. He raised a hand to his head, the glitching static returning to the mist. I do not know. My memories before the Master are fog. I exist to serve the League of Villains. You're a villain, Izuku said. The accusation hung in the air. I am. You hurt people. I do. Then why did you save me? Izuku shouted. The tears finally spilled over, hot and angry. Why did you be nice to me? Why did you listen to me? If you're a monster, act like a monster. Don't make me care about you. Kurogiri stood silent. The yellow eyes dimmed slightly. I do not know, Kurogiri admitted softly. It is a glitch. An error in my programming. When I see you, Midoriya, I feel a compulsion. A familiarity. It contradicts my orders, yet I cannot override it. He moved behind the bar, putting distance between them. He picked up a glass, but he didn't polish it. He just held it. You should not be here, Kurogiri said. Shigaraki is volatile. If he finds out you are analyzing us, if he finds out I am harboring a hero hopeful, he will decay you. He will turn you to dust, Midoriya. I cannot protect you forever. I don't care. Izuku wiped his eyes aggressively with his sleeve. I'm not leaving. Kurogiri looked at him, baffled. Did you not hear me? I am a villain. I am helping to orchestrate the downfall of your society. You're also my friend, Izuku said. The word hit Kurogiri like a physical blow. He stumbled back a step. Friend. The word triggered a cascade of images in his mind. Blue sky. Sushi. A loud voice laughing. We're friends, aren't we? Kurogiri gripped the counter. I am not a good friend to have. I don't have any others, Izuku said stubbornly. He walked up to the bar. He climbed onto his stool. He placed his hands on the counter, right over Kurogiri's clenched fist. I know what you are, Izuku said, his green eyes burning with determination. I know you do bad things. And I can't condone that. I want to be a hero. I will be a hero. Then we are enemies, Kurogiri said. No, Izuku shook his head. Not yet. Izuku took a deep breath. He was terrified. He was trembling. But he was also thinking. You said Shigaraki is immature. You said he treats the world like a game because he doesn't understand it. You're his guide, right? You teach him. I try. Then teach him better, Izuku pleaded. If you have to stay with him, if you can't leave, then change him. Make him understand that destruction isn't the only way. Use your influence. You overestimate my influence, Kurogiri said dryly. He is difficult, and I'll help you, Izuku said. Kurogiri blinked. Pardon? I'll keep coming back, Izuku said. I'll be the NPC. I'll stay out of his way. But I'll talk to you. I'll help you understand the heroes. Not so you can kill them better, he added quickly, but so you can avoid killing them. So you can accomplish whatever you want with minimum casualties. Strategic efficiency, right? You are bargaining with the devil, Kurogiri warned. You are walking a razor's edge, Midoriya. If you fall, there is no net. I've been falling for a long time, Izuku said quietly. You're the only one who caught me. He looked up at the mist. You're not just a villain, Kurogiri. I can see it. There's someone else in there. Someone kind. Someone who likes cats and clouds and makes good tea. I'm going to save that person. Kurogiri stared at the boy. The audacity. The sheer reckless hope. It was illogical. It was dangerous. It was treasonous to the master. But as he looked at Izuku's shaking hands and determined eyes, Kurogiri felt the heavy, cold chains of his programming loosen just a fraction. Midoriya-kun, Kurogiri said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. You are a fool. I know, Izuku smiled weakly. Kaken tells me that every day. Kurogiri reached out. He placed a hand on Izuku's head. He didn't ruffle the hair. He just rested his hand there, a silent vow of protection. Very well, Kurogiri said. If you insist on returning to the lion's den, I suppose I must ensure the lion is fed before you arrive. He moved his hand away and reached under the counter. He pulled out the notebook Izuku had left behind. You forgot this. Izuku took it. He clutched it to his chest. Thank you. And Midoriya? Yes? Next time Shigaraki is here, Kurogiri said, his eyes narrowing seriously. Do not analyze him out loud. He does not appreciate critique. Got it. Izuku nodded vigorously. Silent NPC. Understood. Go home, Kurogiri said. Before I change my mind and warp you into a dumpster. Good night, Kurogiri. Izuku hopped off the stool. He walked to the door. He paused, looking back at the lonely figure in the suit standing amidst the dark bottles. See you tomorrow, Izuku said. Tomorrow, Kurogiri echoed. The door clicked shut. Kurogiri stood alone in the dark. He raised his hand to his neck brace. He could feel the pulse of something underneath. Not a heartbeat. Something else. We're friends, aren't we? Yes, Kurogiri whispered to the empty room. I suppose we are. He picked up the glass Shigaraki had used. He looked at the 4 fingerprints etched into the condensation. Then he looked at the spot where Izuku had sat. He placed the glass in the sink and turned on the water. He washed the malice away, scrubbing until the glass was clean and clear. Outside, the rain finally began to fall, washing the streets of Kamino, but inside the bar, the mist was a little less dense, and the yellow eyes burned a little brighter. The sanctuary held. For now, the morning sun hit the pavement of Muzurifu with a deceptive brightness. It was the kind of April day that promised new beginnings, cherry blossoms lingering on the boughs, the air crisp and smelling of spring rain. For Izuku Midoriya, however, the day smelled like burnt sugar and impending doom. He sat at his desk in Aldera Junior High, his posture rigid. The teacher was droning on about high school applications again, a topic that served only as a cue for the rest of the class to swivel in their seats and look at the quirkless boy in the back. Midoriya, the teacher said, his voice flat, devoid of malice but heavy with exhaustion. You're still aiming for UA, correct? The silence that followed was a physical weight. It pressed against Izuku's eardrums. Then, inevitably, the laughter came. It wasn't a roar. It was a ripple, a scattered collection of snickers and whispered jokes. He never learns, does he? UA? With no quirk? He's gonna die in the practical. Izuku kept his head down, staring at the grain of his wooden desk. A month ago, this would have crushed him. He would have felt the familiar sting of tears, the burning shame of being the anomaly, the mistake. But today, his hand drifted to his pocket. His fingers brushed against a small, folded piece of paper, a receipt from a grocery store in Kamino, signed with a jagged, chaotic scrawl that read, NPC. He wasn't just Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless Deku. He was the tactical analyst for the bartender of the league. He was the boy who had explained the drag coefficient of Kamui Wood's binding lacquers over a cup of Earl Grey tea. He had a secret. He had a sanctuary. I can try, Izuku whispered, more to himself than the class. Ha! An explosion rocked the desk. Izuku flinched, instinctively throwing his arms up to protect his face. The heat washed over him, smelling of caramel and gunpowder. Katsuki Bakugo loomed over him, smoke curling from his palms. His red eyes were narrowed, his grin sharp and predatory. Forget the shitty practicals, Deku, Katsuki growled. You're just a pebble in my path. Don't make me kick you into the gutter. Izuku looked up. In the past, he would have seen only the monster, the bully. But now, a voice in the back of his head, a deep, baritone voice that sounded like smooth jazz, whispered, Anger makes a fighter predictable. He overextends. Look at his stance. His weight is too far forward. Izuku blinked. He saw it. Katsuki was leaning over the desk, his center of gravity compromised. If Izuku were to grab his wrist and pull down while pivoting to the left. He didn't do it, of course. He was still Izuku. But the thought was there. The analysis. It was a shield, invisible and indestructible. I'm just going to take the exam, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice trembling but his eyes steady. There's no rule against trying. Katsuki scoffed, kicking the desk one last time before stalking back to his seat. Whatever. Just don't come crying to me when you get broken. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When the final bell rang, Izuku packed his bag with practice speed. He needed to get out. He needed to get to the station. He needed the quiet, dark comfort of the bar. He took his usual shortcut through the tunnel under the overpass. It was quicker, and it avoided the main arcade where Katsuki and his lackeys usually hung out. He walked into the shadows of the tunnel, pulling out his notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. The pages were crinkled from water damage, the pond incident from weeks ago, but still usable. Today, he muttered, uncapping a pen. I'll ask Kurogiri about the logistics of Empty Lady's Canyon Cannon. If she increases her mass, the displacement of air alone should cause structural damage to nearby windows, yet it doesn't. Is she manipulating the air pressure around her? Squelch. The sound came from behind him. Wet. Heavy. Like raw sewage moving of its own accord. Izuku stopped. A chill that had nothing to do with the tunnel's damp air raced up his spine. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling voice hissed. Izuku turned around. The manhole cover had been blasted aside. Rising from the grate was a towering wall of sludge, a sentient, dark green liquid that smelled of rot and toxic waste. Two manic, bulging eyes floated in the muck, fixated on Izuku. "You'll do nicely," the sludge villain sneered. Izuku scrambled back, dropping his notebook. Wait. Stay back. Don't worry, kid. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. The sludge lunged. It was faster than it looked. Before Izuku could turn to run, the liquid mass slammed into him. It wasn't like being hit, it was like being engulfed. The sludge forced its way into his mouth, his nose, filling his throat with the taste of oil and filth. He couldn't breathe. Panic. Izuku clawed at the fluid. His fingers sank into the slime, finding no purchase. It was like trying to fight the ocean. "Can't breathe, dying. I'm dying." His vision began to spot with white lights. The villain's voice echoed in his ears, sounding like it was underwater. "Stop struggling. You're a hero to me, kid. I didn't know he was in the city." Izuku's lungs burned. His chest convulsed, desperate for oxygen that wasn't there. His mind flashed to the bar. He saw the polished counter. The warm light. The cup of jasmine tea waiting for him. Kurogiri. He was never going to make it. He was going to die here, under a bridge, drowning in filth. He would never hear the jazz music again. He would never finish his analysis. He would just be a missing person report on the news that Kurogiri might watch while cleaning glasses. "Grab something." Kurogiri's voice echoed in his fading consciousness. "If you have no hammer, use a rock." Izuku's fingers flailed. He grabbed at the sludge, trying to find the eyes, the only solid point. But his strength was gone. The darkness was closing in. "I'm sorry, Mom." "I'm sorry, Kurogiri." And then, the manhole cover exploded again. "Have no fear." The voice boomed like thunder, shaking the very concrete of the tunnel walls. It was a voice Izuku knew better than his own father's. A voice he had listened to on loop in YouTube videos since he was 4 years old. "Because I am here." A flash of blue and red. A gust of wind so powerful it felt like a physical blow. Texas. Smash! The air pressure alone ripped the sludge villain apart. The liquid scattered, blasting off Izuku's face. Oxygen rushed into his lungs with a painful gasp. Izuku fell to his knees, coughing, retching, his eyes streaming with tears. Through the blur he saw him, the towering silhouette. The golden hair. The smile that defied fear. All Might. He was scooping the scattered remains of the villain into plastic soda bottles with incredible speed. "Are you alright, young man?" All Might asked, flashing a thumbs up. "Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. This fellow was a slippery one." Izuku stared. His brain short-circuited. The terror of death was instantly replaced by the overwhelming, blinding radiance of his idol. "All Might." Izuku squeaked. He scrambled for his notebook. "Please. Autograph. Sign. Please." "Already done." All Might laughed, holding up the notebook. He had signed 2 whole pages in broad, bold marker. "Thank you. It's a family heirloom. I'll treasure it forever." Izuku bowed rapidly, his head bobbing like an erratic piston. "Ideally, you will not have to." All Might gave a stiff salute. "Now I must get this evildoer to the authorities." "Stay out of trouble, citizen." He crouched down, muscles bunching in his legs like coiled steel. "Wait." Izuku reached out. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough just to be saved. He needed to know. He needed the answer to the question that had been eating him alive for 10 years. The question even Kurogiri hadn't fully answered. Kurogiri had said power was a tool, but he hadn't said Izuku could be a hero. "I have to ask you something." All Might leaped. The wind pressure knocked Izuku back, or it would have, if Izuku hadn't grabbed onto the hero's leg in a moment of pure, adrenaline-fueled insanity. "Hey! Let go! I love my fans, but this is excessive." All Might shouted as they soared over the city. "If I let go now, I'll die." Izuku screamed, his face flapping in the wind. "Ah. Good point." They landed on a rooftop. Izuku collapsed, his legs turning to jelly, his heart hammering against his ribs. All Might dusted himself off. "That was dangerous, young man. I must go. Time is short." "Wait." Izuku scrambled up. Please. Just one question. All Might paused near the edge of the roof. Steam began to rise from his body. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. He clenched his fists at his sides. He thought of the classroom. He thought of Katsuki's explosions. He thought of the quiet acceptance in the bar. I have no quirk, Izuku shouted. I'm quirkless. But I analyze heroes. I take notes. I want to save people. Can I be a hero like you even without a quirk? Silence. The wind whistled across the rooftop. A crow cawed in the distance. Like me? Izuku opened his eyes. All Might was gone. Standing in his place was a skeletal, emaciated man with hollow eyes and messy hair, drowning in clothes that were far too big for him. What? Where did? You're an imposter! Izuku shrieked. I assure you, I am All Might. The man sighed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. He sat down heavily on a vent. He explained it all. The injury. The respiratory system failure. The stomach removal. The limit of his power. He lifted his shirt to show the jagged, purple scar that looked like a spiderweb of pain. This is the reality of the job, kid, All Might said, his voice grave. I smiled to hide the fear. I smiled to trick the fear. He looked at Izuku. His blue eyes, sunken and tired, held no malice, but they held no comfort either. They held the cold, hard weight of experience. Pros are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. Without a quirk? All Might stood up and walked to the door leading to the stairs. No. I cannot honestly say that you can. The world stopped. Izuku felt like the sludge villain had enveloped him again. The suffocation was back. If you want to help people, All Might continued, opening the door, become a police officer. They get a lot of flack because the heroes capture the villains, but it's a fine profession. It's realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. Realistic. He walked to the edge. He looked down at the city. The cars were tiny specks. The people were ants. Take a swan dive off the roof, Katsuki's voice. You are a scalpel, Kurogiri's voice. No, All Might's voice. The greatest hero in the world had just confirmed what the bullies had said all along. Without power, without a hammer, he was nothing. A police officer? A support role? Maybe. But a hero? The one who stands between the innocent and the monster? Impossible. Izuku fell to his knees. He didn't cry. He was past crying. He felt hollowed out. A husk. He didn't know how long he stayed on the roof. Minutes? Hours? The sun was dipping lower, turning the sky a violent orange. Eventually, the sound of explosions snapped him out of his trance. Boom. Boom. It was close. Izuku stood up, moving like a zombie. He walked down the stairs. He walked out of the building. His feet moved on autopilot, drawn to the noise, drawn to the chaos. It was the tragic habit of a fanboy, even a broken one. He reached the shopping district. A crowd had gathered. Police had set up a perimeter. Fire was raging, blue, orange, red. Izuku pushed through the crowd, his eyes dull. It's a villain! Someone shouted. He's got a hostage. Where are the heroes? They can't get close. The fire is too hot. And the villain, he's fluid. Izuku looked. It was the sludge villain. All Might must have dropped the bottle when Izuku grabbed his leg. It was his fault. This was his fault. The villain was massive now, feeding on the fires. And in the center of the muck, thrashing and screaming, was a boy. Ash blonde hair. Red eyes wide with terror and rage. Katsuki, the heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were standing back. They were shouting, coordinating, but they weren't moving. I can't get close. Death Arms yelled. My punch just slides right off him. I need a two-lane road. Empty Lady cried. The fire is my weakness. Kamui Woods shouted. They were waiting. Waiting for someone with the right quirk. Waiting for the hammer. Izuku watched Katsuki struggle. The sludge was covering his mouth. His eyes met Izuku's across the crowd. Help me. Izuku's legs moved. He didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He just sprinted. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms screamed. Izuku ducked under the police tape. He ran toward the inferno. The heat seared his skin. The smell of burning rubber choked him. A weapon without a commander is useless. Izuku's mind, which had been dead only moments ago, suddenly ignited. Time slowed down. The heroes are static. The villain is fluid. Katsuki creates explosions. Explosions require oxygen. The sludge is suffocating him, cutting off his ignition source. Kurogiri said, "If you lack the physical power to crush your enemy, you must have the mental acuity to make them crush themselves." Izuku didn't have a quirk. He had a yellow backpack. He swung the bag by its strap. He didn't aim for the body. He aimed for the only solid point he had seen in the tunnel, the eye. The backpack sailed through the air and slammed into the villain's bulging right eye. Arg! The sludge villain recoiled, his liquid form wavering. The grip on Katsuki's mouth loosened. Katsuki gasped, sucking in air. Izuku skidded to a halt in front of the monster. He clawed at the sludge with his bare hands. "Deku?" Katsuki coughed. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I don't know," Izuku screamed, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the soot. "My legs moved on their own. You looked like you were asking for help." "I don't need your help, you damn nerd. Just shut up and breathe," Izuku yelled back. He remembered his analysis of Death Arm's center of gravity. He couldn't pull Katsuki out by force. He had to disrupt the villain's stability. Izuku grabbed a piece of burning debris, a metal pipe, ignoring the searing pain in his palm. He jammed it into the sludge near Katsuki's shoulder, twisting it, creating a pocket of air. "Explode it, Kaken!" "Inside the pocket." "Force him out," Katsuki understood. He didn't say thanks. He just snarled and ignited his palms. Boom! The explosion, contained by the sludge but directed by the pipe, blew a massive hole in the villain's hold. Katsuki ripped his arm free. "You little!" The sludge villain roared, recovering from the backpack strike. He raised a massive tentacle of muck, hardened into a blade. "I'll kill you both." Izuku looked up at the death descending on them. He had no plan left. He had used his rock. He had used his scalpel, and then the wind came. All Might appeared, blood coughing from his mouth, steam rising from his skin, but his smile locked in place. He grabbed both boys. "I really am pathetic," All Might boomed, though his voice strained. "Preaching to you, yet failing to practice what I preach. A pro should always be ready to risk his life." Detroit smash. The punch changed the weather. An updraft of massive proportions spiraled into the sky, scattering the sludge villain into harmless droplets, and extinguishing the fires instantly. Then, it began to rain. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and scolding voices. Izuku sat on the pavement, a paramedic checking his eyes. Kamui Woods and Death Arms stood over him, their faces stern. "That was reckless," Death Arms barked, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. "You could have gotten yourself killed. You were in the way. Do you have a death wish?" "You have no quirk," Kamui Woods added, shaking his head. "What did you think you could do?" "Leave it to the professionals." Izuku shrank under the verbal assault. I just stay home next time," Death Arms grunted. 10 feet away, the heroes were swarming Katsuki. "That quirk is amazing, kid. You held out for so long. You're a natural-born hero. Come work for my agency when you graduate." Izuku watched. He had run in when they stood still. He had created the opening. He had devised the strategy that let Katsuki breathe. And he was being scolded for existing, while Katsuki was being praised for being a victim with a flashy power. Society places undue value on power. Kurogiri was right. All Might was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished into the press to avoid reverting to his skeletal form. He hadn't stayed to defend Izuku. Why would he? He had already told Izuku the truth on the roof. Realistic. Izuku stood up. He bowed apologetically to the heroes, mumbling sorry over and over again until they let him go. He began to walk. He didn't go home. He couldn't face his mother. She would see the news. She would cry. She would apologize for not giving him a quirk. He needed to go where apologies didn't matter. The bar was quiet. It was 7:30 p.m. The sign was flipped to open, but there were no customers. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft scratch of a jazz record. Cold train, blue train. Kurogiri was behind the counter, reorganizing the wine glasses. He liked things orderly. He paused. The air in the room shifted. The back door opened. Izuku Midoriya stood in the threshold. He looked like a war zone. His uniform was singed and torn. His hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat, rain, and green slime residue. His hands were bandaged crudely with gauze he must have gotten from the paramedics. He smelled of smoke and ozone, but it was his eyes that stopped Kurogiri cold. Usually Izuku's eyes were anxious, darting, or lit with intellectual curiosity. Now they were dull. Flat. The light behind them had been extinguished. Midoriya? Kurogiri set the glass down. He moved out from behind the bar, the mist swirling with concern. What happened? I saw the news, the sludge villain incident. Was that you? Izuku walked into the room. He didn't sit on the stool. He just stood in the middle of the floor, dripping water onto the pristine hardwood. He told me no, Izuku whispered. His voice was cracked, raw from smoke inhalation. Kurogiri stopped. Who? All Might. Izuku looked up, and the tears finally started. Not the comical fountains he usually cried. These were silent, painful streams that cut through the grime on his cheeks. I met him. He saved me from the villain the first time. I asked him if I could be a hero without a quirk. Izuku clenched his fists, his nails digging into the burns on his palms. He said no. He said it's not realistic. He said I should be a cop. He told me to give up. Kurogiri felt a spike of emotion that he hadn't felt in, ever. It wasn't the programmed loyalty to Shigaraki. It wasn't the disdain for heroes. It was rage. Pure, white-hot, protective rage. Here was a boy who had analyzed pro-heroes better than the pros themselves. A boy who, if the news reports were accurate, had just run into a burning inferno to save a bully while the heroes stood and watched. And the symbol of peace had crushed him. He is a fool, Kurogiri hissed. The mist flared, turning jagged and dark. All Might is a hammer who thinks everything is a nail. He cannot see the value of anything he cannot smash. He's right though, Izuku sobbed, his legs giving out. He collapsed onto the floor, curling into himself. I tried. Today. I ran in. I threw my bag. I hit the eye. I tried to use strategy, but it wasn't enough. All Might had to save us anyway. I just got in the way. The heroes yelled at me. They said I was useless. Izuku hit the floor with his fist. Thud. I want to die, Kurogiri. I just wanted to stop hurting. Kurogiri stared at the broken boy on his floor. He remembered the command Shigaraki had given him earlier that day. We need more pawns. Strong ones. Ones who hate this society. Kurogiri looked at Izuku. This boy didn't hate society. He loved it too much, and it was breaking his heart because it didn't love him back. If Kurogiri were a true villain, a true Nomu, he would use this. He would twist this grief. He would say, yes, they are evil. Join us. Destroy them. But as he looked at the green curls shaking with sobs, Kurogiri heard a different voice. A ghost from a life he didn't remember living. Hey, don't cry. We'll figure it out. We always do. Kurogiri knelt on the floor. He didn't care about the mud or the slime. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Midoriya. Look at me. Izuku didn't move. Izuku. The use of his first name made the boy look up. His face was a mask of misery. You ran in, Kurogiri said softly. When Death Arms stood still. When Kamui Woods made excuses? You moved? Yes, Izuku choked out. But it didn't matter. It mattered, Kurogiri said firmly. Because you did what they could not. You acted. That is the fundamental requirement of a hero. Not a quirk. Action. But I can't win. Izuku cried. I'm weak. I'm small. I can't punch a sludge monster. Then stop trying to punch. Kurogiri stood up. He walked to the bar and grabbed a towel. He threw it at Izuku. Wipe your face. Get up. Izuku fumbled with the towel, wiping the slime from his eyes. He slowly got to his feet, swaying slightly. All Might told you to be realistic, Kurogiri said, pacing back and forth, his mist trailing behind him like a cloak. He told you that without power, you cannot be a hero. In his world, he is correct. In the world of daylight and sponsorship deals and popularity polls, you cannot be a hero. Kurogiri stopped. He turned to Izuku, his yellow eyes blazing. But the world is not just daylight. There are shadows. There are cracks. And in the cracks, raw power is clumsy. It is loud. It is inefficient. He stepped closer, towering over the boy. You have a mind that dissects weakness. You have a spirit that moves when others freeze. You lack a weapon? Fine. Kurogiri extended his hand. The mist swirled around his fingers, forming a portal about the size of a coin, spinning mesmerizingly. I will give you weapons. Izuku blinked, sniffling. You can't give me a quirk. No, Kurogiri said. I offer something more reliable. I will teach you how to fight. Not like a hero, with flashy moves and named attacks. I will teach you how to fight like a villain. Izuku recoiled slightly. Like a bad guy, like a survivor, Kurogiri corrected. I will teach you how to use your environment. How to use stealth. How to exploit the hesitation of others. I will teach you how to take down a man twice your size by striking the vagus nerve. I will teach you how to disappear. Kurogiri lowered his hand. All Might close the door on you, Izuku. He told you there is no path. I am telling you there is a path. It is difficult. It is dirty. It is not glorious. You will not get autograph signings. Kurogiri knelt again so he was eye level with the boy. But you will be able to save people. You will be able to protect your friends. You will never have to stand helpless and watch someone die again. The bar fell silent. The only sound was the rain tapping against the high windows. Izuku looked at his hands. They were scarred, burnt, and trembling. He thought of the look in Katsuki's eyes. The fear. He thought of All Might's skeletal face saying, "No." He thought of the feeling of the backpack hitting the eye. The momentary triumph. He didn't want to be a villain. He knew that. He wanted to be a hero. But maybe Kurogiri was right. Maybe the kind of hero he could be wasn't the kind that stood on a pedestal. Maybe he had to be something else. I don't want to hurt innocent people, Izuku whispered. I would never ask you to, Kurogiri lied. Or was it a lie? He found himself hoping he could keep that promise. And I still want to go to UA. Kurogiri paused. UA. The target. The enemy fortress. Then we will prepare you for the entrance exam, Kurogiri said. We will make you into a candidate they cannot ignore. We will force them to see the scalpel. Izuku took a deep breath. He wiped the last tear from his cheek. The despair was still there, a heavy stone in his gut, but alongside it, a new flame flickered to life. Spite. Determination. Hope. Okay, Izuku said. Okay? Teach me, Izuku said, his voice gaining strength. Teach me how to fight. Teach me how to use the shadows. I want to save everyone. Even if I have to do it from the dark. Kurogiri felt a strange sensation in his chest. Pride. Very well, Kurogiri said. He stood up and straightened his vest. Training begins tomorrow. Bring a change of clothes. And try not to smell like a sewer. Yes, sir. Thank you, Kurogiri. Do not thank me yet, Midoriya. Kurogiri turned back to the bottles, hiding the softness in his eyes. I am going to work you until you wish you were merely quirkless. Izuku managed a weak, watery smile. I think I can handle it. Later that night, after Izuku had gone home, walking with a slightly straighter spine, despite the bruises, Kurogiri stood alone in the bar. The monitor on the wall buzzed to life. Static filled the screen, followed by a voice that sounded like smooth velvet over jagged glass. Kurogiri, all for one spoke. Kurogiri stiffened. Master, I sense a disturbance in you, the voice said from the void. You seem agitated. Merely the events of the day, Master, Kurogiri replied smoothly. The sludge villain incident caused a disruption in traffic. It delayed my supply run. I see. The voice posed. And Tamura? How is he? He is resting. He was displeased by the hero's victory today. Good. Let his hatred grow. Master, Kurogiri ventured, a dangerous question forming on his tongue. If one were to find a potential asset, one with no power, but high intelligence, would that be of use to us, a strategist? All for one mused. Power can be given, Kurogiri. Intelligence cannot. If you find such a mind, nurture it. Bring it to our side. Understood. Kurogiri bowed to the screen. The screen went black. Kurogiri exhaled. He had permission. Sort of. He would train the boy. He would tell himself it was for the League. He would tell himself he was grooming a strategist for Shigaraki. But as he picked up the damp towel Izuku had used, Kurogiri knew the truth. He wasn't raising a villain. He was raising a hero who would survive the world that tried to kill him. He carefully folded the towel and placed it on the counter. The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 a.m. For most 14-year-old boys, this was an ungodly hour reserved for sleepovers gone wrong or catching early flights. For Izuku Midoriya, it was simply the start of the first half of his life. He slapped the snooze button, his arm feeling like it was made of lead. Every muscle fiber in his body was screaming a protest song. His back ached, his legs trembled, and his hands were a map of blisters upon blisters. He rolled out of bed, his feet hitting the floor with a heavy thud. He looked at the All Might poster on his wall. The hero's smile was as blinding as ever. I am here, the poster seemed to say. I'm coming, Izuku groaned, grabbing his tracksuit. 10 months. That was the timeline. 10 months to turn a scrawny, quirkless nobody into a vessel capable of holding the greatest power in the world. He slipped out of the apartment before his mother woke up, jogging through the pre-dawn silence of Muzurafu toward Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The air was cool and salty, a sharp contrast to the smell of rotting trash that awaited him. When he arrived, he was there. All Might stood atop a refrigerator, silhouetted against the rising sun. In his muscle form, he looked like a god made of flesh and American comics. Good morning, young Midoriya. All Might bellowed, sending a flock of seagulls scattering in terror. Are you ready to sweat for your dreams? Yes, All Might. Izuku shouted back, though his voice cracked. Excellent. Today we focus on the lower sector. Tires. Move those tires. Then the microwave ovens. Remember, this isn't just cleaning. It's bodybuilding. You must prepare the vessel. For the next 4 hours, Izuku was a machine. He hauled rubber. He dragged rusted metal. He engaged in a tug-of-war with a sofa that had been waterlogged since the dawn of the Quirk era. All Might shouted encouragement. Squeeze your glutes. Back straight. Plus ultra. It was grueling. It was straightforward. It was the American dream plan. It was about raw power. Building mass. Creating a tank that could withstand the recoil of a cannon. But All Might didn't teach him how to throw a punch. He didn't teach him how to dodge. He assumed that once Izuku had the power, the punching would come naturally. After all, when you are a hammer, the world is full of nails. By 8 a.m., Izuku was a puddle of sweat and exhaustion on the sand. Good work today, All Might said, reverting to his skeletal form with a poof of steam. He handed Izuku a bottle of water. You're progressing faster than I anticipated. The vessel is taking shape. Thank you, All Might, Izuku panted. He pulled out a notebook, the one marked dietary exercise logs. I tracked my caloric intake. I increased the protein as you said. Splendid. All Might patted his shoulder. Now off to school with you. A hero must also educate his mind. Izuku nodded, bowing low. He ran home, showered, changed into his uniform, and went to school. He sat through classes. He ignored the whispers. He ignored Katsuki's glare, which had become more confused than angry lately. Katsuki had noticed Izuku wasn't flinching as much. He noticed Izuku looked harder. When the final bell rang at 3:30 p.m., the second half of Izuku's life began. He didn't go home. He told his mother he was studying at the library. He told All Might he was resting his muscles. He took the train to Kamino. He walked into the shadows. He entered the bar. You are late, came the smooth, baritone voice. Kurogiri stood behind the counter, but the bar was closed to customers. The stools were pushed aside. The center of the room was cleared, mats laid out on the hardwood floor. Sorry, Izuku said, dropping his yellow backpack. Teacher kept us late. Excuses are the first thing an enemy will exploit, Kurogiri said calmly. He was wearing his usual suit, but he had removed his vest and rolled up his sleeves, an odd sight for a man made of mist, but it signaled that it was time to work. Take off your blazer. Warm up. Izuku did as he was told. He moved through the stretches Kurogiri had taught him, dynamic, fluid movements, unlike the static stretches All Might suggested. How are the hands? Kurogiri asked, drifting closer. Sore, Izuku admitted, flexing his blistered fingers. Hauling trash is rough. You are building strength, Kurogiri observed, his yellow eyes narrowing as he watched Izuku move. But you are stiff. Whatever community service you are doing, it is focusing too much on isolation muscles. You move like a truck. I need you to move like water. Kurogiri stepped onto the mat. Come at me, Kurogiri-san. I don't want to hit you. You won't, Kurogiri said dryly. Attack. Izuku lunged. He threw a clumsy right hook, imitating the way he'd seen All Might punch on TV. Kurogiri didn't warp. He didn't use a portal. He simply stepped to the side, a movement of barely 3 inches, and caught Izuku's wrist. With a subtle twist of his hips and a tap to the back of Izuku's knee, gravity did the rest. Wham! Izuku hit the mat face first. Predictable, Kurogiri stated. You telegraphed that punch from the doorway. You pulled your shoulder back. You inhaled sharply. You might as well have sent me a written invitation, Izuku groaned, rolling over. Again. For the next 2 hours, they trained. This wasn't about building a vessel. This was about survival. Kurogiri taught him the villain's way. Heroes fight with honor. Kurogiri lectured, helping Izuku up. They square up. They announce their presence. They rely on their quirks to overwhelm. He swept Izuku's leg again. Izuku fell. You do not have that luxury. You are small. You are powerless. You must cheat. Cheat? Izuku asked, rubbing his elbow. Throw sand in their eyes, Kurogiri said seriously. Stomp on their instep. Use their momentum against them. If they are looking at your hands, kick their shin. If they are looking at your feet, strike the throat. They practice joint locks. They practice how to break a grip. They practice how to fall without breaking a bone. Your analysis implies that most heroes rely on a specific cadence, Kurogiri said, dodging another of Izuku's strikes. Eraserhead fights in bursts. Endeavor fights with overwhelming pressure, break their rhythm. Izuku finally managed to anticipate Kurogiri's sidestep. Instead of punching, Izuku feinted, dropped low, and swept his leg out. Kurogiri didn't fall, he simply turned into mist at the point of impact, but he stumbled. He had to reset his footing. Good, Kurogiri said, a hint of pride in his voice. Very good. Izuku beamed, sweat dripping down his nose. Tea break, Kurogiri announced. They sat at the bar. Izuku drank his jasmine tea. Kurogiri polished a glass. It was the only time Izuku felt the two halves of his life merging. The physical exhaustion of the day met the mental clarity of the night. You look tired, Izuku, Kurogiri said softly. I'm fine, Izuku lied. You are burning the candle at both ends, Kurogiri warned. This, community service. And this training. And school. You are 14. I have to be ready, Izuku said, tracing the rim of his cup. The entrance exam is in 4 months. Yue, Kurogiri murmured. The word always soured the air in the bar. You are still determined to enter the lion's den. It's the only way to change things, Izuku said. If I become a hero, a different kind of hero, maybe I can stop kids from ending up like the people you work with. He meant Shigaraki. He meant the villains who were created by society's rejection. Kurogiri paused. He looked at the boy. Izuku was covered in bruises, some from the trash, some from the mats. He was exhausted. He was lying to his mother. He was lying to everyone, but his eyes were clear. You are a strange creature, Kurogiri sighed. Finish your tea. We still need to review the structural blueprints of the Mock City robots you predicted. Month 6. The crack in the mirror. The lie was getting heavier. Izuku stood on the beach. It was July. The heat was oppressive. He was shirtless, hauling a rusted engine block across the sand. His muscles had grown. He was no longer a stick. He was lean, corded with functional strength. All Might watched him with pride. Young Midoriya. Take a break. Izuku dropped the engine. Thanks, All Might. He grabbed his water bottle. All Might sat on the fridge, looking serious. There have been rumors lately, All Might said, his voice dropping the boisterous persona. Police chatter. About an organized group moving in the shadows. The League of Villains. Izuku choked on his water. He coughed violently. Careful there. All Might patted his back a little too hard. But yes. They seem to be gathering. Recruiting. It worries me. Really? Izuku squeaked. Villains are opportunistic, All Might said, clenching his fist. They prey on the weak. They whisper sweet lies to those who feel left behind. You must be careful, my boy. Evil often disguises itself as a friend. Izuku felt a cold knot in his stomach. Evil disguises itself as a friend. He thought of Kurogiri. He thought of the tea. He thought of the gentle way the mist villain corrected his stance. He thought of the way Kurogiri hid him from Shigaraki. Is he manipulating me? Is this all a trap? Later that evening, the doubt followed him to the bar. You are distracted, Kurogiri noted. They were analyzing a video of a hero fight. Empty lady versus a giant villain. Sorry, Izuku muttered. Just thinking. About? Izuku looked at Kurogiri. Why do you do it? Do what? Serve him, Izuku said. Shigaraki. He's cruel. He wants to kill people. You're not like him. You're smart. You're patient. Why do you help him hurt people? Kurogiri set down the remote. The mist around his neck seemed to tighten. Loyalty is not always a choice, Izuku, Kurogiri said enigmatically. I was designed to serve. My purpose is to ensure he succeeds. Even if his success means destroying everything? Heroes destroy things too, Kurogiri countered, his voice sharpening. Look at the screen. He pointed to the pause video. Empty Lady had crushed a building to stop the villain. That was an office complex. How many livelihoods were ruined? How many insurance claims denied? But she is cheered because she is beautiful and flashy. Heroes save the day, but they often leave the ruins for others to live in. Kurogiri turned to Izuku. All Might smiles. He tells you everything is fine. But he does not see the people in the alleys. He creates a shadow so bright that the darkness becomes absolute. I serve the darkness because it is the only place that accepted me. Izuku bit his lip. I accepted you. The silence that followed was profound. Kurogiri stared at the boy. The programming in his head, the directives from All for One, screamed at him. He is a hero candidate. He is the enemy. Use him or kill him. But the glitch was getting stronger. The ghost of Oboro Shirakumo was clawing at the walls of the Noma's mind. Yes, Kurogiri whispered. You did. He reached out and patted Izuku's head. Do not trust anyone fully, Izuku. Not even me. And certainly not All Might. We are all wearing masks. Month 8. The Eye of the Master. The bar was empty. It was late, past midnight. Izuku had gone home hours ago. Kurogiri stood before the monitor. The screen was static, but the presence emanating from it was suffocating. Kurogiri, the voice of All for One intoned. Master. Kurogiri bowed deeply. Tamura tells me you have been unavailable during the afternoons lately, All for One said. The voice was pleasant, conversational, which made it terrifying. He says the bar smells of jasmine tea. Tamura hates jasmine. Kurogiri's heart, or whatever bioengineered organs served as one, stuttered. I have been gathering intelligence, Master, Kurogiri lied. The lie tasted like ash. I have cultivated an informant. A local student. Ignored by society. Invisible. Oh? The static shifted. A recruit? A resource, Kurogiri corrected. He had to frame this carefully. If All for One thought Izuku was a pet project, he might order him killed. If he thought Izuku was a weapon, he would want to twist him. The boy possesses a high-level tactical intellect. He analyzes pro-heroes with near-perfect accuracy. I am extracting his notes to aid Tamura's development.